Sports Podcast.
And McAllister down the left field line. Connor Tate is going to round third. He will score. And rounding third is Blaylock. He will score. And the Dogs walk it off.
If you're looking for the latest Georgia Bulldog news in football, basketball, baseball, and recruiting, then you are in the right place.
It's third down, Bryce Young's career. You need 10, play clock at 4. From the pocket, launching downfield, underthrown and intercepted. Keely Ringo has an escort down the sidelines. All the way to the end zone, and Georgia is going to conquer the Crimson Tide.
Hosted by Jeremiah Stoddard and Jonathan Williams.
Georgia on the mountaintop. Demons be gone, and the drought is over. National champions at long last.
Just sit back, relax, and prepare yourself for these hot takes you're about to listen to.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Classic City Sports. As always, Jeremiah Stoddard and Jonathan Williams. We are super pumped about this one because there is the biggest game of the season by far coming up this Saturday against Tennessee. So that is obviously what we are going to spend our time talking about today. A couple little things to talk about in general. You know, we might hint at or talk a little bit about some stuff from Florida this past weekend because, you know, you got to talk a little bit about that. You beat Florida by 22.
Yeah, it's still a big deal.
It's still worth talking about for a minute. So we are going to get into that a little bit. And then obviously we're going to spend most of the time focusing on this Tennessee matchup and what Georgia's going to face this weekend. Obviously got to talk about the rankings that came out a little bit as well because Georgia fell to 3, Tennessee jumped to 1 in the new college football playoff rankings. So we'll get into that a little bit as well. But Jonathan, how are we feeling?
Man, I'm just pumped up for this weekend. I was having a conversation with my dad last night, and he was kind of put in perspective about how spoiled I have been. Like, as a student at the University of Georgia, he's like, man, you got to go to the University of Georgia versus Notre Dame home game. My first day as a student last semester, Georgia won the national championship. So you have that. And now I also get to go to the game this weekend as a student, and it's the biggest game in Sanford Stadium history, in Georgia football program history in Sanford Stadium. So it's the golden era of college football. So I'm just pumped up. Like, the fact that Georgia's in this position is what Georgia fans should be focusing on for this week. You know, of course, there's going to be nerves. And that, like I told you before the show, you said, man, I'm nervous about this week, Jonathan. I said, that's a good thing, Stoddard. That's a good thing that you're nervous because that just means you have something on the line. You have skin in the game right now. Georgia has a lot of skin in the game, and there's high stakes for this weekend. And that's what college football is all about, man. That is what it's all about. So
That's what we talked about,
man.
Before the show when you said that. I was like, I'm nervous going into this game because it is, like you said, the biggest home game that ever. Like, it is. It's 1 versus 3 with a trip to Atlanta on the line for Georgia and for Tennessee.
Into the college football playoff.
And a lock, essentially, yes. Yes, that's basically what you're at this point in time. So it's so much on the line. And we sat back and we talked about this before the show. And it was like, man, when is the last time a regular season game made us feel like this?
Yeah.
It's been a couple seasons.
Yeah.
It has.
Like, every playoff game has those nerves.
Yeah, I'm not talking about postseason play because that obviously.
Regular season games, like, you can count them on one hand. You know, we said the 2020 Alabama game, these same type of nerves were going on. Last year, you didn't have a single one in the regular season.
None of the regular season
like,
games.
Every single game, it was just like, okay, yeah, Georgia's more than likely going to take care of business. So, like, there's been maybe 4 games in Kirby Smart's time at the University of Georgia where there's been a game like this where fans are just amped up for it, biting at the bit to just get to Saturday. Like, let's just go ahead and get there, kick it off, and let's see what's going to happen. And that's what the Saturday is. Everyone's like, let's get to Saturday. Let's see how these two teams match up against one another and find out who is the better team. That's what everybody wants to find out. So we're going to here soon. You got 3 days left, and then finally, toe meets football, and it's game on at that point.
Yeah, you know, we do our talking season stuff throughout the off season and all that kind of stuff. And this throughout the week, it's all the time. Everybody gets to talk, right? And there's been so much circulating. You've heard so much from Tennessee fans for weeks now, weeks upon weeks, where they have continuously said, hey, how good they were. And then they've also talked about how Georgia's not played anybody. And none of that stuff matters. You know why? Because you still have to line up across from each other on Saturday. Nothing that anyone has said, nothing the team could say, nothing that you and I could say matters once that ball.
Get on the old cliche of like, we're 0-0 every week.
Every single week.
0-0 every single week.
And this game has so much on the line. Like it's so fun to think about. Like I'm excited thinking about it. I'm nervous, yes, obviously, but I'm so excited to see that Georgia has the opportunity to do this. And honestly, every Georgia fan should be so happy that this game has as much on the line as it does, because so many Georgia fans, especially season ticket holders, talked about how they didn't get a good home game. Well, now you get the best home game possible.
Yeah. And
so you better show up and be loud, like Kirby asked everybody to do on social media this week. So I expect it to be probably the loudest Sanford Stadium has ever been. I really do.
Yeah. I mean, this is what fans have been wanting all season. I know it's not the 7:30 kickoff that what people wanted. It's not going to be dark when kickoff comes around, but still, you're in the prime time slot for your conference, and like all eyes are going to be on you Saturday. Everybody's watching your game.
It's the only one that matters.
Yeah, it is the game of the year and one of the biggest games of the last 10 years in regular season college football wise. So Georgia fans have a great opportunity in front of them this weekend to really just, I mean, you just get to get after it finally for a regular season game. Like the Arkansas, like people showed up for a noon Arkansas game last year. I know Arkansas was ranked in the top 10 at the time, and people were saying maybe they could challenge Alabama in the West. Unfortunately, we kind of got to see what Arkansas really was later on in that year. But still, if you can show up for a noon kickoff against Arkansas, you best believe that Georgia's going to show up for a 3:30 kickoff against one of their biggest rivals. It's not only an SEC game; it's one of their biggest rivals. It's one of the most hated opponents for Georgia fans. So they're going to show up. And we'll get into that later about how the fans can have such an impact on this game later. We got a bunch of numbers that we're going to roll through here, and numbers that not only favor Georgia more than likely, but they're very relevant as to how this game more than likely will play out and what Georgia needs to do to win this football game.
Absolutely. And speaking of showing up, shout out to the entire Williams family that is in the comment section right now.
I got the whole
The entire family is in there,
Look,
and that's a beautiful thing.
List them up.
I love you guys. Y'all are awesome.
I got the 3 family members in here. I got the roommate in here. I got the fiance in here.
Everybody.
Look, I'm pulling my weight.
Everybody's
here,
in here.
I really am.
I'm telling you what, we know your family seems to like you more than mine likes me, apparently, because they're not in the comment section. That's all I'm saying. But anyways, but yeah, there is a lot that the fans can get into on this game as well. But let's real quick, like when we're talking about this, because I kind of hinted at it a second ago, when you saw that ranking come out on yesterday, Tuesday, and you saw Georgia fell to 3 and Tennessee dropped to 1. Now, I'll start by saying I don't think either of us are surprised that Georgia fell from the number 1 spot, and I'm not surprised to see Tennessee at number 1 because that's just been kind of like circulating before that ever came out. That's just kind of what I felt was going to happen. Seeing Georgia drop to 3 was something to me. That's what got me a little bit.
Yeah, I don't think I think almost 99% of people, everybody was advertising this game as 1 versus 2. Everybody was, because everybody thought Tennessee was, or at least everybody thought one of the two was going to be number 1, the other one was going to be number 2, regardless of the order. People thought this was going to be a 1 versus 2 matchup. So yeah, Ohio State getting up there at number 2 did shock me a little bit. It honestly did. But I also, like, as soon as I saw Georgia pop up at number 3, I was just like, Kirby Smart is just eating this up right now. He is just loving this. The fact that he gets to
he slipped somebody some money at that table to say, hey, let's kick him down a little bit further.
The fact that he gets to walk into his locker room the next day and he gets to go, you see that, boys? Drop 2 spots. That's what the world thinks of you right now. If you think you've accomplished anything yet in this season, you are so mistaken right now.
They don't believe in you.
This is how they picture you right now. You not only are below Tennessee now, you're 2 spots behind Tennessee. How are you going to answer? Guarantee you that was the opening line today for practice or whenever their first team meeting was. I just know that Kirby Smart was eating that up. But, I mean, other than that, we've been saying it all year on this on this channel. It's football's going to take care of football. And yeah, it is kind of interesting that the AP cool. number 1 team in Georgia is going to be going up against the college football playoff number 1 team. So maybe we're about to find out who's superior in the rankings. Like
I can already hear Gary Danielson opening talking about the number 1 team versus the number 1 team or something along, and then talking about that and going. I promise you that's how.
Ones.
Yeah, I promise you that's how Gary's about to open the show up on Saturday.
But
and so I expect that to happen.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. And you and I were texting yesterday when this came out, and we were looking at it, and it doesn't matter.
No, don't mean anything.
None of the fact that you're a top 4 team is cool and everything like this. The first college football playoff ranking is so irrelevant. It literally means nothing.
What's it supposed to do? It's supposed to do what we're doing right now.
Yeah,
serves as a talking point. You had millions of people tuning into ESPN last night to watch these rankings be unveiled, see where their team was placed at, blah, blah, blah. It's the whole talking point every single week from here on out. Every Tuesday when those rankings are released or whatever day they are released, that's what everybody's going to talk about. Who moved? Who dropped? Who rose? Who's the number 1 now? Who are the 4 teams now? Who are the 2 teams looking in? That's what everybody's going to talk about, because what does that do? It just builds up the playoffs, builds them up every single week from here on out. And so that's all they're serving as. And it serves as now like tennis or LSU and Alabama. Now you got a number 6 versus number 10 matchup as well. TV ratings, man. Where's the money at, Stoddard? Where is all the money at? The TV ratings. It's what people. That is what drives these.
If you want
to
know what led to a decision, follow the money. That's what we always say on here, right? Just follow the money, and you will find out what led to that decision. That is exactly what it was, and maybe that's what it was, right? Like putting them at number 1 and dropping Georgia to 3. It created this buzz. It created this like conversation. We're sitting here talking about it. Everybody's talking about that, and that's going to lead up to all the anticipation of this Saturday. And yeah, what your dad's talking about in the comments right now, Tennessee is the new toy everyone loves. Like everyone loves the new toy.
It's that brand new PS5 on Christmas, Stoddard. That's what it is. If y'all watch Brooks' stuff, you would get that reference. But it's that brand new PS5. But man, that Xbox 360, that's the reigning national champion that's been around, and they've been doing this for a while. That's still a great console too. But everybody wants to look at this brand new shiny console that everybody wants on Christmas, until all of a sudden people forget about that one and the Xbox 360 and like, man, that was such a great console. So it's that type of thing, man. Georgia's been doing this. And so, yeah, when something new comes around, that's what everybody is glued to. That's what all the conversation is centered around. And that's why you turn on the TV to SEC Network. You turn the TV on to ESPN Sports Center, whatever. Everybody's talking about Tennessee's offense. That's all it is. It's because when Georgia was hot, that's what people were talking about. Like, man, this Kirby Smart defense, something we've never seen before. Now it's Tennessee's defense. This offense is unreal. Flashbacks to LSU 2019, whatever you want to say. So it just kind of shifts. And again, that's what drives the most ratings right now, talking about Tennessee's offense. That's what people want to hear.
That's exactly what they want to hear. And you can't even blame like Tennessee fans for being so excited about seeing number 1 up.
No,
because think back to and I'll pull myself into this, because Georgia, when Georgia finally started getting that type of recognition, and Georgia started landing in that number 1 spot on those exact same rankings back in
it's a different feeling.
Yeah, the past few years when we've felt that, we've got to see that. And like in 2017, you got to see that. And then you got killed by Auburn afterwards. But still, even before that happened, like you were so excited as a fan. You're like, look at the recognition that Georgia is getting. Most like you and I I was very little. You weren't born when the last time Tennessee won a national championship.
Heck no.
So I was really little. But you weren't even so like
I was 7 years old when they were last in the SEC championship.
Right. So that's what I'm saying when I get to like the fans are so excited about this because they haven't had this in 20 years.
So.
They haven't had this anticipation, this excitement. And honestly, I'm here for it because once again, it gave Georgia an East opponent that is a worthy opponent to actually create buzz and create the excitement that you and I get to sit here and be just like nervous about the game. But Georgia's also still a top team in the country right now, and we're nervous because there's a team that's going to be a fun one to watch us play.
Well, I mean, just take a look at what went down on social media yesterday. Like, who were the teams that were posting their rankings on their football pages? Like, their social media pages. Who are the ones posting it? Tennessee put one out. I think USC put one out as well. It's these teams that are finally getting in the mix for some college football playoff recognition.
The ones that weren't were the Georgia, Ohio State, Clemson and Bama.
It's the teams that are like, this is the expectation. This is our standard. Insert the Kobe Bryant line of job's not finished. Like, what's there to smile about?
What's there to celebrate? What's there to smile about? There's nothing. Because you've recently had that type of success, you have a standard, and that's not a shot at Tennessee fans or the University of Tennessee. They should be excited about this. They do have something to be excited about. Now you got to play the game on Saturday regardless. That's why I say this ranking, it created the conversation, but it meant nothing. It didn't change what's going to happen after this game. It didn't have any impact on anything that's going to change, to happen at the end of the day, this was a must-win. If Georgia still was number 1 in the country, right, and Tennessee was the number 3 team in the country, Georgia loses this game on Saturday. Guess what?
Winner
Tennessee
pretty much punches their ticket to Atlanta.
Yes.
That is what is at stake on Saturday, because the opponents after that for both teams, I mean,
Georgia has Mississippi State,
Kentucky,
and Georgia Tech, right? Is that our 3?
and Tennessee has South Carolina, Missouri, and Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
Like, come on, guys.
So those games, like those games aren't going to be the issue there. So, but the point being,
and South Carolina, I think, is one of the other ones. I switched one of them around for Tennessee.
Tennessee has they have Missouri,
South Carolina,
and Vanderbilt are their 3. Yeah,
right.
That's their 3.
Maybe I did say, I don't know. For some reason, I felt like I skipped over South Carolina, but
I don't know. But the point being, if you lost this game, then you were out regardless, because you're not going to make it to Atlanta. And if you don't make it to Atlanta, you could sit there at, say 11-1, and you don't get to play in that game. The way that college football is as a whole right now, say Tennessee's there at 12-1 and they lose to Alabama in the SEC championship game.
Then you're definitely out.
You didn't have a chance anyways.
Well,
the only chance you had if you lost this game, and still, this is still
you
a
could go
potential.
down a whole rabbit hole, but basically it'd mean you would want Tennessee to beat Alabama.
Yes.
You'd want Ohio State to lose a game.
You need all this stuff to happen.
You need a bunch of us. So basically,
win the game,
and you don't worry about anything.
It doesn't matter. Yeah. That's why I saw all these fans getting mad about different things, and it's like it didn't change anything. All it did was maybe build the excitement of the game a little bit more than it already was. But like you said, we expect it to be number 1 versus number 2. I kind of expected Georgia to be that number 2 team. Yeah. Didn't expect them to be 3 though. So that was the big change. But overall, I think it's just fun for everybody.
Yeah,
it's going to be a good game. I'm excited about it. Let's take a break of this talk real quick, just because I said we would talk about it a little bit as well. We'll come back to the Tennessee stuff in a few minutes. Georgia versus Florida last weekend. What was your big takeaway from that? Because it can be applied to, moving forward in this next game coming up this Saturday.
Team just finds a way every time. I mean, Florida was able to get it within 8 points. A lot of it had to do with turnovers, something that we said this offense cannot do, and it's why teams are able to climb back into the games with Georgia. Go back and look at any Missouri game, Kent State game, and now the Florida game. Anytime a team was able to get back in it with Georgia, it's because you started turning the ball over. You're putting your defense in bad spots, and they can only do so much for you. So Florida was able to find a way to get back in the game, but Georgia just finds a way to answer. Anytime that a team claps back at them, they just answer with their own. And even then, this was not a fantastic game for Georgia by any means, especially not on offense. A great first half on offense. Everything was clicking for them, but not a great third quarter specifically. So you still come out with a 22-point win against Florida, one of your biggest rivals. And so,
the spread was 22.5.
Yeah, so bad day. Bad day if you took the points on that one. We apologize for that one, but it's just Georgia finds a way, man. They find a way to win, and they always find a way to make it look dominant. Add that little oomph into the scoreboard.
At the end of it, right?
Sure, if you go back and watch the film, you'd be like, okay, maybe it wasn't all that pretty, but man, they always make sure it looks
still a 22-point win, man.
Yeah.
That's insane.
So
that's a big deal.
Georgia took care of business, and they always find a way to answer. They always find a way. They always just find a way to win. That's what they do.
Well, and this is the thing that I looked at that game as well. Being the spread being 22.5, I don't remember what the over-under was on that game, but 22.5 for a spread of that game, first of all, is crazy. Secondly, Georgia's offense averages 41.8 points a game.
Something like that, yeah.
Did you think they were only going to score 25 and Florida was only going to score 3 or something like that? No, they weren't. Georgia scored 40 points, 42 points, which means the other team has to score about 20 in order for that spread to be right around that number. And yes, they only scored that many points because of those turnovers. You and I talked about this. I think I've said this. I don't think I actually have said this on here because it was after this game that I came up with that was all 3 games that Georgia has allowed 20 points, we've turned the ball over at least twice.
Yeah.
At least twice.
Something you can't do on Saturday. You cannot.
2 of those 3 games, you turn the ball over 3 times. You cannot do that against Tennessee.
Cannot, dude. You cannot turn the ball
that
over.
Offense is going to score points. If you give them extra possessions, It's over with.
Well, what's their whole mentality on offense? The whole mentality is we're taking as many shots as human possibly. It's going back to what like a Kobe Bryant type of mindset. Like, man, we're chucking that thing and we're sending it. Like, we are taking our shots every single time we get the ball, and we are running at a rapid pace. We don't care. We are just going to score, score, score. That's what you want to do. And turnovers, you're gifting them more opportunities. And you can't give Tennessee more opportunities. And we'll just go ahead and get into it. I think that's where this conversation is going into. There's two things, in my opinion, that are Georgia's biggest allies on Saturday. One of them I already talked about. It's the fans. You better show up. You better be loud. Kirby Smart already said if you can talk after Saturday, you did not yell enough if you were at that game. I think Georgia's fan base is going to show up. And there's something that plays into that, and I'll bring up this stat right now as well. And I think this is really interesting when you start looking into like Tennessee's overall schedule, how they have looked in those games, and kind of where do they struggle? Finding those little areas of struggle that you can I can't really find, kind of stumbling over my words right now. But so here it is. Tennessee ranks 120th. Let me say that again. In the nation for penalties called against them this season, averaging 8.3 per game, 8.3 penalties for about 74 yards per game. That's not even the most interesting part, Stoddard. They've had 6 home games this year, so only 2 true road games. In those 2 road games, which they played at Pittsburgh, it's like, okay. Like, all right.
Okay. Hey, they were ranked at the time.
Okay, yeah. But, man, when I think of big-time atmospheres in college football, my mind does not go to Pittsburgh. I'll tell you that. And then their other one was in LSU at Death Valley, which was at noon. In those 2, they averaged 9.5 penalties for 88.5 yards. They had 7 against Pittsburgh and 12 against LSU. LSU was out of that game from the get-go, man. So that the fan base really wasn't even a factor. But yet, 12 penalties on the road. This is a team that gets a lot of penalties called against them. Now you're about to factor in a fan base that is about to be off the hinge, off the chain on Saturday. I think that's a big opportunity for Georgia right now. I think that's huge for Georgia's fan base to really have an impact on this game. Second one, time of possession, man. Tennessee ranks 124th in time of possession. Like I said, they score
What is
quickly.
it, like 26 minutes a game or something like that?
Georgia ranks 4th.
Right around
4th in the nation for time of possession. They eat a bunch of clock. And so those are your 2 biggest allies, your fan base, the people that are going to be standing behind you on Saturday, and the clock. Keep the clock running.
Zach has me laughing right now. He's not wrong. Yeah. Kirk was definitely saying some stuff that wasn't accurate. That's what we're saying. Man. They do.
That's why you come to us. That's why you come to us, Zach. We're going to give you the truth. We're going to lay it all out for you. I told you, we're going to run through a bunch of numbers tonight. That's one of them. And we're going to give it to you straight. So yeah, your fan base is one of the big things. And then also just take up time of possession, man. When you score, make Tennessee play your style of football. That's what it really comes to. Don't get into this shooting match with them. Play your style of football and stay true to that. And you'll be in a good spot to win. Well,
and going into that too, because the reason their time of possession is so low is they score quickly. Because they're scoring 45, 40-some points a game, like something up there. It's like they're scoring a lot really quickly. Make them, and if you guys watch Brooks Austin on his YouTube show, we were watching a little bit before we came on here ourselves. Don't let them just blow you out and score in 3-4 plays. Make them at least drive the field and make 9-10 play drives. Make them have a 9-10 play drive. Let's see if they can do that. They haven't had to really do that this season very often at all. Again, let's see if they can do that.
Make them change up their play style.
Yeah,
like if they're going to
away
score,
those explosives.
This Tennessee offense is going to put up points, but make them do it your way. Make them earn it. Don't let them chunk the ball for 60-plus yards and get down in the red zone quick and score in 8 plays. Make them go 12 plays for 6 minutes and get the ball in the end zone. Make them do that. You got to make them readjust their type of game and make them play your game, especially when you have your home environment, you're in Sanford Stadium. Make everything go your way. Do anything you can to make them adjust and kind of change things up a little bit. Another stat I'm going to go ahead and throw at you. So everybody wants to talk about how Tennessee's offense is light years ahead of everybody else. But Georgia's still right in the thick of things, too. Tennessee's number 1 in total yards of offense. Georgia's number 2. There's that one. But also, so I did some digging on this. I wanted to see how both teams have played against non-FCS opponents because Tennessee's played 3 of them already. Georgia's had played 2 of them. So I wanted to see how those numbers stacked up against one another. You play in the same conference. You pretty much play the same opponents. Here's how they came out. So against non-FCS opponents, so just SEC teams, for Tennessee, they're averaging 41.6 points per game and 496.6 total yards of offense. Georgia, on the other hand, so it's non-FCS opponents again, but you have Oregon in here, a team that's in the top 10 now, number 8 to be exact, and freaking lining it up on the scoreboard. Georgia's averaging 43.6 points per game, 2 points better than Tennessee on offense, and 538.8 total yards of offense, almost 40 yards better than Tennessee on offense against non-FCS opponents, guys. So take out the Ball States, take out the UT Martins, and you just stack it up against conference schedules. Guys, Georgia statistically is better than this Tennessee offense against teams like that.
Dan, I've said the same thing. If they ever hold an open trial, I've told him he has to for UGA basketball. That's something that he has been told.
If you're listening, I'm just a phone call away, man. I'll hold a water bottle or whatever, man. I'll watch some film with you. I'll break it down with you. I'm just a phone call away, brother.
Dan, appreciate that there, Dan. And also going back, because I just saw Dan's name again, shout out to the 4 Wide podcast, because on Sunday, if you do watch that one with us as well, I don't know if Jonathan and I are going to be very talkative or be able to talk very well, but we're going to try. So Dan, you might have to kind of pull that one a little bit there as well. But yeah, like those stats, like that stuff is important, right? Like those things, when you actually look at it and you go, hey, Georgia's offense really isn't that far off from Tennessee overall then, right? Everyone sees the total offense where they're number one in the country on that part, right? Well, Georgia's right there.
Georgia's right
there. But the difference is Georgia's defense does not allow 400 yards of total offense every single game. They do not allow 21 points a game.
Georgia's secondary is not 125th or whatever they are in passing defense. In fact, they're in the top 10. Now they're second in the SEC. They were number 1 in the SEC. They're just behind Texas A&M now. But man, like Jordan, that's what I keep going back to about this game. When people are like, Jonathan, how do you think this game is going to pan out? How do you think Georgia's going to win? Why do you think Georgia's going to win? Georgia's the most complete team in this game. Tennessee does have a pretty solid run defense. They have been able to stop teams on the run, and I think that may be why. Maybe that's their unconventional way of making teams one-dimensional. Like, man, we may suck in the passing game, but we're just going to make you pass the ball. You're not going to be running the ball. We suck so much at passing. We're just going to make you pass. Like, that's what we want to do. Go ahead and score quick because we want the ball back anyway. So maybe that's their little inside scheme about what works out for them. But I just think Georgia's team it's the most complete team in college football. I don't care what anybody says.
They are, literally.
Look at the numbers. Look at the product. Look at the schedule. Look at what they have done so far. Look at their resume. They are the most complete team in college football. And I think that's what I keep going back to in this game. When I really think about it, I'm just like, I just don't see a way where – I don't know. Unless Tennessee just – again, if you get in a shootout, then that's a different story. But Georgia doesn't tend to let that happen.
Here's the thing. Last year, everyone talked about like this Tennessee offense last year because they were scoring a lot of points and throwing the ball around everywhere and all that kind of stuff. And what happened when Georgia traveled to Knoxville? They shut them down, man. Mm-hmm. It was a very different type of game than what you were used to seeing from Tennessee. And no, Georgia does not have the same defense this year. They don't. We understand that. They're not going to be as dominant on defense as they have been. And that's why I expect Tennessee to still score points in this game. And I don't expect Georgia to blow them out like they did last year. But Georgia is still very similar on defense. They still have one of the best defenses in the country. And Kirby Smart is one of the best defensive-minded coaches in the entire nation.
Do we need to remind you who they have coaching that secondary right now? I mean, we've said it a bunch. But
Coach Boom.
Man, you got Will Muschamp, Kirby Smart, and Fran Brown back there coaching up that secondary right now. That's a perfect storm almost, a perfect coaching staff to go against a team that really likes to chunk the ball. Those are 3 really good defensive-minded guys and 2 guys that play the position in college, and they really know what they're talking about. So that only goes in Georgia's favor as well. And here's another thing. You know, I've been seeing a lot of this week is that, when Georgia faces top-end offenses under Kirby Smart, they have not fared well.
What's the stat? 1-9 when the team has scored 30 points against us. I think that's what Harrison. I think that's what Harrison and Dan said on their show last night.
And they're like 2-8 or something like that when going up against like a top 5 offense or something like that. But also, let me say this: this is the first time ever under Kirby Smart where Georgia has had an offense that's scoring more than 40 points per game. Most of those games came when Georgia was not very known for their offense whatsoever. They were still kind of figuring things out in between offensive coordinators, and they definitely didn't have the weapons that they do now. They didn't have a Brock Bowers running around the field, that's for sure.
They weren't scoring 41 points a game.
No. So to counteract that, Georgia hasn't fared well in those types of games, but they also haven't had an offense like they had this year as well that can compete with these teams. Finally, they do have this offense has improved from last year statistically. If you look at the numbers they have, and now you got a defense that is really good as well. So, I mean, again, you can say that, but at the same time, Georgia's changed a lot too. They've improved in a lot of areas since then as well.
They have improved in a lot of areas. Like, once again, this is the best offense that Georgia has ever had under Kirby Smart. And it's the best offense that I've ever watched as far as statistically scoring that many points per game and throwing and having that many yards per game. Like, I mean, when's the last time you remember Georgia throwing for 300 plus yards a game for the entire season?
2012.
Yeah. And guess who was there?
Yeah, Aaron Murray and a lot of offensive weapons. You had Malcolm Mitchell over there, Chris Conley, Malcolm Bennett. I mean, yeah.
Michael Bennett.
Yeah, you had a lot of dudes that year as well. So
that's
how long ago it's been, though. That kind of puts it in perspective.
And yes, great comment there. When you have, as many running backs that you've had at Georgia, of course you're not throwing the ball as much over the past couple of seasons. The difference this year is Georgia doesn't have the same stable of running backs. Plus, Todd Monken has been there for a while. And that's not a shot at the running backs that Georgia currently has. I love some of the running backs that Georgia currently has on this roster. They are just different. We don't have Sony Michel, Chubb, and Swift, and those guys on the roster all at the same time. All of those guys were at the same time. All three of those guys are still playing in the NFL right now. And Chubb is probably one of the top three running backs.
He's running back one.
Like there are few guys that you can even make an argument about him with in the NFL right now.
I've said that Georgia fans really got spoiled during that stretch where you went Gurley, Chubb, Michelle, Swift. Like, man, very rarely do programs hit 4 in a row at the running back position like Georgia did, like first round caliber players, like 4 in a row. That's freaking impressive. Now you got, but at the same time, Georgia's running game this year has been getting hot at the perfect moment. Dejon Edwards is really turning a corner right now.
He's now leading the team in rushing, I think, with
leading the team in rushing
yards
and rushing touchdowns.
Yeah.
He's running good.
And he wasn't getting that many snaps early in the season.
Kenny McIntosh was running with his hair on fire on Saturday. He put up 90 yards, but, man, there were some physical yards. Carrying some people on carrying the pile, carrying Brenton Cox into the end zone. Man, like, that's some physical running.
And then he threw a punch and shoved some people.
Now he's no longer
he's not even on the team anymore.
So, and Kenny McIntosh is not known for being like a very physical runner. He's the shake shift guy that's going to make you miss, make guys open up and get missing space. So you got 3 guys right now. Kendall Milton's stuck kind of up in the air in regards to health and if he's going to be able to go on Saturday. But you got Branson Robinson, you got Dejon Edwards, and you got Kenny McIntosh. The offensive line has been blocking really well, and they've been blocking on a mission. They've been people on a mission, man. They have really emphasized their run blocking right now, and so I think that's a good thing going into this game because you're going to need to be able to run the ball. Like I said, keep that clock ticking, and you're going to be in good shape.
Absolutely, and that's what you and I talked about. You and I we were talking about this early in the week, and I was saying, because I just looking at the stats of like the way everything is, and you go, well, Tennessee allows 300.5 yards passing per game. They allow 300. I think total they allow 393 yards of total offense on there, and 300.5 of that is through the air. And so I told you, I was like, I could see Georgia having a decent like air attack in the sense of throwing. You see him throw for over 300 yards in this game because this defense allows 300 on average. And they had a quarterback. I mean, even
I'm glad you brought that up. Keep going.
Even was this the game that Anthony Richardson threw for 400 yards? Was it Tennessee?
Yeah, it had the game of his career.
420 yards or something like that against Tennessee. And this is Anthony Richardson.
You mean a team that Tennessee barely got by when Georgia just beat them by 22 points. I don't like to do the transitive property, but, man, Georgia did that, beat them by 22 points on a neutral site. Tennessee had them at home, and they barely got by that Florida team. And they made Anthony Richardson look like the number 1 overall prospect that everybody keeps claiming he is and will be. So
yeah, and exactly. And that's what so with this, I do expect Stetson to throw the ball a decent amount. But your point was, man, this is a game that actually that rushing attack is extremely important in a game like this. So jump into that a little bit as far as how that goes.
Well, I said time of possession is your friend, and what keeps the clock moving? Running the ball, keeping the ball on the ground. And you still got to use your passing attack. Don't take that away. That's been your identity on offense. That's when you have Darnell Washington and Brock Bowers, two guys that have been playing really well so far, you've got to get them the ball. Get
Darnell
your
has
playmakers
looked
the ball.
so good, man.
Ladd McConkey as well. I know he's kind of been up and down this season, but you got to keep going to him, man. He's a little jitterbug out there.
He's a playmaker.
He'll make guys miss, and he'll make some big plays for you when you need to. Rosemy Jack Saints look pretty solid. You got to get the ball to those guys. But what you can do is you can use your run game to just open that up even more. And then the whole playbook is open. Tennessee is at Todd Monken's mercy at that point. If Monken's able to get into his bag on Saturday and he's able to just pick you apart, it's going to be a long night for Tennessee. So, but yeah, I'd say emphasize the run game. And it's really, like I've been saying this quite a bit over the past couple of weeks, is that when Georgia starts getting back on, like when Georgia's struggling on offense or when they need to get back going, what do? They just go back to the run game and they rely on it, and they allow the run game to really kickstart things. I think that's what they should do on Saturday, man. Rely on those three backs that you have right now, and Robinson, McIntosh, and Edwards, maybe Milton too, if he's healthy on Saturday. Let them boys run, man. You have a great offensive line. You got Broderick Jones, Cedric Van Pran, and Warren McClendon, who's been playing solid this year as well, and two really good guards. So let them eat, man. Let those guys eat. Let them get downhill. Let them punish Tennessee and drive down the field methodically, eat up clock, and still put up points on the board. So I think that's what Georgia should do on Saturday. I think that's probably what they are going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's and kind of what was being said in there earlier. Robinson has looked really good when he's getting a chance to go as well. And so even if you don't have, Kendall Milton, who hasn't been healthy all year really, like since the beginning of the season, really he's been dealing with some things. And I hated to see how his career has kind of played out. And I think he could have been a lot better and thus far in his career at Georgia had he been able to stay healthy. So I think a lot of Georgia fans kind of discredit what he can do because of that. And I don't think that's necessarily fair. But if he can't play or isn't a big factor, again, then you get to see Robinson really get to take some of those. Edwards has looked so good. And it's fun to watch this team be able to get back to that identity a little bit. Even though you were throwing for 300 yards a game, you can still call on that run game now. I think it's the last three or so games that Georgia really was able to kind of start clicking on that. And it's really helped them in those situations like you're talking about. And so that is something that you need to focus on. And Dan, you put something out there a second ago that is a great point. I think this is great for both teams. Stay out of the predictable downs and distances. This is key for both teams on this because Tennessee really likes to take those shots on first down. You don't convert on that, and all of a sudden you're in a different spot when it's 2nd and 10, because then if you don't have a great second down, all of a sudden you're in 3rd and long, and it just puts you in a really bad spot in that drive. It kind of screws you up. So if you win that first down for either team, if you win first down, you're going to be in a really, really good spot for your team on that drive.
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee runs the ball really well. I know everybody talks about their passing game and Hendon Hooker and what they're able to do through the air, but they run the ball really, really well. But I'll also say this. They take shots on first down. That's kind of what you just touched on right there, is that's what they like to do on first down. They like to take their shots downfield on first down. But so if they miss, though, it's 2nd and 10. They're going to the run game. And if you stop them in the run game, that's where you kill their offense. That's what Georgia has to do on Saturday defensively. You got to keep everything in front of you. Don't let them – they're going to probably get a deep shot or two on you because, they're good. They scheme up things really well, and that's just what they've been doing this year. So you're probably going to give up some explosive plays, but what you can do is on those ones that they do miss on, you got to make it count, stuff them in the run, and you get them a 3rd and long situation, and then you're in business. That's where Georgia eats people alive. When you get them into 3rd and 8, 3rd and 12, 3rd and 10, or 3rd and longs, man, that's where Georgia becomes a big difference maker. And that's what separates them from being like just a good defense to an elite defense. Because when they get teams in those positions, I don't care how good you are, Georgia's going to win those battles on 3rd down. They do. They win on 3rd down. So when you get Tennessee on 3rd down, you have to get them off the field. You can't miss on those opportunities.
You can't miss on those opportunities. And the key to that is, once again, they like to take that shot on first down. 2nd down is typically, if the 2nd and 10 type scenario, they like to run the ball there. So you can put yourself in a really good 3rd down position against this team if you can slow down their running backs and Hendon Hooker specifically too, because he is a great scrambler with the ball and improvising and making that play.
The only thing is that You're not going to be able to have Chris Smith coming down in the box helping you out in the run. You're not going to be able to ask Malachi
Your
Starks
safeties
to come down
cannot
in the
help
box.
in run defense this week.
You got to do it with the 6 guys you have in there. And you can't overload the box either, and that's where they pick you apart through the air as well. That's kind of what happened to Alabama in their game against Tennessee. You have to just put the same number of guys that they got in the box, and you got to win your battles. My dad highlighted one of the comments, Jalen Carter. He's healthy now. You saw him in Florida on third downs. You can't have him just playing third downs against Tennessee, not only because Tennessee's not going to let you sub, first off, but he's got to be a difference maker on Saturday. I think he will. I'll take Jalen Carter over any offensive lineman, interior offensive lineman in college football, any offensive lineman, period. So I think he's going to have a big game, and he's going to have to. Jamon Dumont-Johnson's going to have to do his thing as well. You got to stop the run with the guys you got up front. You can't be asking Malachi Starks and Chris Smith to come in there and pitch out.
No, and once again, like you got your guys up front. You get your down linemen up front, and your linebackers have got to be able to hold their own in that as well. But they've got to be able to help in that pass game too. Because if that linebacker cannot drop back and help that coverage, because they are going to spread you out defensively. They are going to. They line up with 4 wide receivers as far wide as you can get. A lot.
That wide receiver is going to have his foot on the boundary.
You can barely see him on the TV copy. That's what you're going to see. Yeah,
almost.
Exactly. So they're going to spread you out, which means your linebacker is going to have to be able to help cover some of that extra space, because you can't just expect these corners and safeties to just be one-on-one on them all day long. They will eat you alive like that. And like you said, and we talked about earlier, you cannot have help from your safeties in the run game, because that is when they will absolutely destroy you over the top. If your safety comes downhill to help stop the run, unless they can clearly see that it is a run play and know, but they can't anticipate run very often and try to hit, you won't see Chris Smith making a tackle at the line of scrimmage this week.
He might.
He likes to do
that. Sometimes.
He likes to do it. He's good at it. But I'm going to be, if I see him start running downhill, I'm going to be so nervous, because if they pull that ball,
Jalen Hyatt's going to burn you, brother.
Every time.
It's what's going to happen.
Every time.
That's where they really get you. But you were talking about Hendon Hooker earlier, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I get it. Hendon Hooker is front runner for the Heisman right now, rightfully so. He has been lighting it up this year. He's put up freaking insane numbers in that offense. But so I did some other stat digging, like I like to do. I broke down the numbers for you, and I wanted to see how the 2 quarterbacks, Stetson Bennett and Hendon Hooker, fared against top 25 teams. And I didn't do this bull crap that people do right now, where it's like, well, Tennessee beat ranked Pittsburgh, Tennessee beat ranked Florida. No, I went back through their careers, and whoever finished in the top 25 is who I used as a top 25 team that they played. Both played 8 top 25 teams in their career. Both of them did. And here's how the numbers crunched out. Bennett had 2,126 yards and 18 touchdowns, 6 interceptions against top 25 teams. Hendon Hooker, he had 1,987 yards and 16 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Bennett has put up better numbers against top 25 teams compared to Hendon Hooker. I know Hooker spent some time at Virginia Tech. He also spent some time in Tennessee, where Tennessee was in at the time. But still, my point of that
Stetson Bennett was only throwing the ball like 12 times a game last year.
My point of that stat alone was to show that, when does Stetson Bennett play his best? When the lights are brightest, when everything is on the line, that's when Stetson Bennett turns into the quarterback that everybody loves. The guy that was taking shots against Alabama, hitting those shots, putting up points, and he's the most ballsy player in those moments. And that's when he performs best. And so I like his chances on Saturday, because everything's on the line.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to add to the conversation of it, since we're comparing the 2 quarterbacks in that spot, did you know that Stetson Bennett has 11 more passing yards on the season than Hendon Hooker? He actually has more passing yards than Hendon Hooker has this season. It's the touchdowns to interception ratio, especially, because he's got 21 touchdowns to 1 interception. That's where it's key. And that is why Georgia cannot turn the ball over this week, because Hendon Hooker will not.
No,
he's going to protect the football. If he throws an interception, it'll literally be the 2nd interception on the season. It is. And 21 touchdowns to 1. Versus Stetson only has 9 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. 2 of those came last week. One of those was nowhere near his fault. Nowhere near his fault.
But that also has to do with when Georgia gets into striking distance, like in the red zone area. Stetson Bennett said it himself after one of the games. I think it was after Vanderbilt. He's like, man, our red zone success depends on how we run the ball. They run the ball in the red zone. That's what they like to do in the red zone. So, yeah, that kind of takes away from some of his opportunities to get some passing touchdowns in there. That's just what Georgia and Monken like to do on offense when they get down in that area, whereas Tennessee, no. They like to chunk it and they like to score.
Yeah, they do. And I think that Georgia is going to put some points up this week. Like we've talked about, I'm going to kind of summarize a little bit on this because we're running in about 45 minutes on the show. So you're going to score some points. You've got to protect the football. You've got to win that time of possession like you usually do and keep Tennessee off the field as much as possible. Those are my biggest things on that side of it. Defensively, win first down. If you win first down consistently
on both sides
of the ball, but defensively, you've got to win it because you cannot let them operate in 2nd and 6 all the time. And because then they're going to be in 3rd and shorts, or they're going to get first downs real quick and that stuff. And the way they throw the ball downfield, they are going to kill you because surprisingly enough, they do run the ball fairly well. They have some decent guys on that side of the ball. So you've got to be able to make it to where they're obvious passing situations or stuff like that. So you don't have to worry about it. So you can drop that extra linebacker into coverage and they can help. And you just make Hendon Hooker hold the ball for a little bit longer or question that decision a little bit more. And it gives your safeties and your corners a lot more time to kind of catch back. If they get beat or something, they can have time to recover, that kind of stuff. Those are very important this week.
So really, this is what this game boils down to. I know this game can get so overwhelming for Georgia fans specifically to look at, try and figure out how Georgia is going to win this game when Tennessee has all these flashes on offense. They got a lot going on over there. This is really what the game boils down to. Yes, TD's in the red zone.
You got to convert. You can't kick a lot of field goals.
Got to make those trips count. But
that's the other thing that in those games that the Samfords and the Kent States and the Missouris, way too many field goals in those games. Those are the games that Georgia didn't play very well offensively overall. Too many field goals. You can't be settling for field goals in this game.
No, yeah, definitely got to make your shots count. But really what this game boils down to for Georgia, one, fans got to show up, man. Make them throw some laundry on the field, back them up, get Georgia better field position on offense, get those false starts, anything you can, be loud for every single second of that football game. Use it to your advantage that you have this game in Athens. That's one. Two, time of possession. We have freaking drilled this into y'all tonight, and it's for a good reason because the clock is your friend, man. It is your friend on Saturday, so run the ball, take time on offense. Don't start getting into their game where you feel like you got to rush and score quickly. Just run your game, run your style, keep the game in yours, how you like to play it. That's what you got. Number 3, win the line of scrimmage on both sides, and that goes into running the ball on offense, protecting Stetson Bennett, but more specifically on defense, win the line of scrimmage with your 4 down linemen. That's what this boils down to for Georgia defense. You do those 3 things, man, Georgia's going to win. I think if those 3 things happen, Georgia's going to come out with a dub on Saturday.
Georgia, the funny thing about all this, we've talked about it so much, and Georgia dropped in the polls. Tennessee gets to go up in it. The funny thing about it is the betting line, the Vegas betting line still has Georgia at an 8-point favorite, which also is crazy for being the team that just dropped from the number 1 spot. The other team took your spot.
What does the ESPN FPI say too?
74.5% chance that Georgia wins this game is what the FPI, the ESPN FPI.
Vegas lines are one thing. That has a lot to do with where money is at. ESPN FPI, that's another story. The fact that 75% chance essentially that Georgia should win this game, I think that's pretty telling of how people view this matchup.
The other key to winning first downs that I mentioned earlier is for you, for me, and everybody else. If you're there, be loud. Force that false start or delay of game or one of those penalties that the fans can really impact.
It's been
then you put them behind the sticks on 1st or 2nd down, and all of a sudden it's a different scenario for your defense because of what you were able to do as a fan.
It's been, I believe it's 39 years since the top 5 matchup has taken place in Sanford Stadium. 39 years. Who knows when the next one's going to be after this, guys? Make it freaking count. Make it count. Soak it up. Enjoy it. Make the most of it. And more importantly, make sure you help your team get the dub on Saturday. Just have fun with it. Enjoy it because you don't know when that next opportunity is going to happen. You don't know when Sanford's going to get this type of environment again.
Enjoy it. We've talked about this before the season started too. This Georgia football team is at a spot where you need to enjoy the level of football that they are playing at. And
it's a golden era.
It is. You've got to be able to enjoy it as a fan. We said that, and then Georgia had a couple struggle games, and all of a sudden the national media stopped showing love to Georgia anymore, and that kind of changed over to Tennessee getting it and all these other things like that. But it doesn't matter what they think or how they're looking at it. We said it when they were giving you a lot of props and stuff, and everybody got worried about that. And you were like, we both sat here and said, it doesn't matter what they say or anything. Just enjoy it as a fan. You get to talk your junk. Maybe hold off on talking junk prior to this game and wait until you actually get out there and have the results of this one, because once again, everything is even and fair once that game, that whistle blows and that clock starts. It is up to those players on there to really just iron it out.
None of the noise matters at that point. All of a sudden, it's about how you perform for those 60 minutes during the football game. And so, but I think that's a great note to end this off of. Dan, I saw you ask twice about it. No King of the Hill tonight, man. I mean, we got a 1 versus 3 matchup coming to town. I told Star, I said, man, I feel like we got a lot to talk about tonight. I don't know that we're going to be able to do pick'ems. I don't know that we're going to be able to do King of the Hill. So we kind of just scratched it because both of us had a lot to say about this game. There was a lot of talking points for us. So we just had to make sure that we got to those. Look, we did 50 straight minutes talking about Georgia versus Tennessee.
And we talked like 2 minutes about like the Florida game, just to throw it in there a little bit to make it relevant for the conversation on it. If you want something real quick for a King of the Hill thing, college football playoff first rankings means 0. They literally are completely irrelevant.
We pretty much gave you that earlier in the show too.
They don't matter. It changed nothing. It means nothing except it builds anticipation for fans and everybody, and it makes everybody talk. But as far as the actual impact of the season and anything that happened, it meant nothing. Doesn't mean a thing. It changed nothing. Georgia's going to play the same game on Saturday, have the same outcome no matter which way it went this week. And if they lost, they were screwed anyways. Changed nothing. Drop them to 3 didn't mean anything.
Yep. Well, that's going to wrap it up, guys. We gave you the game plan. We gave you what we think it takes for Georgia to win this football game, and we said it. We like Georgia's chances in this game. It's going to take a lot. It's going to take a good game from Georgia, but Georgia has it in them to be able to pull this type of game off. They've shown that in the past, especially under Kirby Smart. But that's going to wrap it up for us. We got the Twitter handles below. You guys know the drill. Go follow us there. Look at my stats. Look at Stoddard's funny tweets that he puts out as well. He gets a little bit after other opposing fans and media members.
I like to fight them a little bit.
So you got both sides of the ball in regards to Twitter. Like the video if you haven't already. That really helps us beat the YouTube algorithm. This is a big week for us content-wise. It gets our videos out there to more people. The more you guys hit that thumbs up button, it helps us out a lot.
If you enjoyed us talking about this as well, make sure you let people know that we put on the show this week and your friends or family. Yeah. And just tell them to, if they don't want to watch it on YouTube because they don't have time to sit there and watch a video, it's on all podcast platforms, Apple, Spotify, Google, all of that stuff. So make sure you listen to it and share it with everybody that way. That will be super helpful for us this week. Like you said, it is a big week for us content-wise. We had a lot to say. Make sure you guys, as always, keep it classy in the Classic City. Be loud on Saturday, and we will catch you guys next
Hit that sub button.
Hit the sub button. There you go.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Classic City Sports. Take a second to subscribe, rate, review, and share with your friends and family. Feel free to reach out to the Classic City Sports crew on Twitter with any topics you'd like discussed. You can reach out to Jeremiah at The Stodfather, to Jonathan at Dr._J Will, and make sure to follow at Classic City Pod for show updates. Check back next week for a brand new episode. In the meantime,
2 simple words which express the sentiments of the entire Bulldog